You're doing it right now. Going over that conversation again. You know which one. That conversation ended. You didn't. That's the problem. You're replaying a conversation in your head right now. Or you were, until something made you look at your phone. You'll go back to it. The second this ends, the replay didn't start because you wanted it to, and it won't stop because you tell it to. That's the thing about loops. They don't take orders from the person inside them. You're not replaying that conversation. You're rehearsing the verdict. Psychology has a name for it. Rumination. But that name is too polite. Makes it sound manageable. Like a habit, like something you could notice and put down. A habit is something you choose. This chose you. What it actually is. A courtroom. You're the prosecutor. The defense, the jury, and the trial has been running for 6 hours. Nobody's going home. Your brain, which forgot where you put your keys this morning, has perfect recall for this. Picture this. The conversation ended at 7 p.m. It's now 11:43. You've been doing other things. Eat dinner. Watched something. Replied 2 messages. And somehow the whole time, some part of your brain never left the room. It's still there. Going over the same 30 seconds. The same pause. The same look. The same 2 words said in a tone that was slightly off. Here's what doesn't make sense. You've had hundreds of conversations this year. Most disappeared. You don't remember what the cashier said Tuesday. You don't remember most phone calls. You've had conversations that changed relationships, changed jobs, changed entire years of your life. Most of them disappeared. So why this one? Why did this conversation survive when everything else went quiet? Maybe it was important, but you've had bigger ones that didn't make it to Tuesday. Maybe you said something wrong, but you've said worse things and moved on. The thing about the replay, it isn't interested in accuracy. It's interested in alternatives. Not what happened. What could have happened. What should have happened. The courtroom isn't replaying reality. It's replaying possibilities. And in those possibilities, you're always smarter, always calmer. Always say the right thing. And somehow, you still don't feel better. If winning the replay was the goal, why doesn't winning help? Most explanations say you're replaying the conversation because something went wrong. I don't think that's true, because some of the conversations people replay the longest aren't the worst ones. They're the ambiguous ones, the ones that could have meant 10 different things, the ones that ended without a clean explanation, the ones where you never quite figured out what happened. Maybe that's why the replay never helps, because the other person isn't in the replay. They haven't been for hours. You're presenting evidence to a court that's already empty, and some part of your brain is still adding new evidence, as if the jury might suddenly change its mind. It won't. They already left. Your brain has a system for unfinished things. The moment the world goes quiet, it starts checking open files, and unresolved social situations sit near the top of the stack. That's why the replay gets louder at night. Not because the conversation got bigger, because everything else got smaller. The second, nothing urgent is happening. Your brain starts revisiting whatever still feels unfinished. Psychologists call this post-event processing. Neuroscientists would point to something called the default mode network. Different names. Same experience. The moment the outside world stops demanding your attention, your mind returns to whatever it still hasn't resolved. Same neural pathway your brain runs for actual threats. Same cortisol, same hypervigilance. Same refusal to stand down, not because you're weak. Because your brain cannot tell the difference between a predator and a conversation that just didn't make sense. Both are unfinished, and unfinished things get revisited. It wasn't the whole conversation. That's the strange part. 30 minutes happened. Your brain kept for seconds. A pause, a look, a reply that arrived too fast. Oh, too slow. A goodbye that felt half a degree colder than it should have. A change of subject. A reaction that never came. The conversation moved on. Your attention didn't. It stayed behind with the splinter. Pick yours. You already know which one it is. And here's the part that makes it worse. The people who seem unbothered. They're replaying it too. They've just accepted that the verdict doesn't change anything. They still lost the argument. They still misunderstood each other. They just stopped showing up to the retrial. They probably don't even know the splinter exists. Not because they were careless, because they genuinely don't have the log. They filed the conversation under happened, moved on by dinner. You're still in the courtroom. They haven't been in the building for hours. Here's the part that's difficult to admit. Some part of you doesn't want the loop to close. Not yet. Because as long as it's open, you still have a case. You still have standing, a reason to stay. You're still in the conversation. The moment the loop closes, you have to accept that it ended the way it ended. Not the way the simulation ended. The real way. I'm not going to tell you to let it go. You can't. Not tonight. Some loops don't close because you didn't try hard enough. They stay open because the scissors were never yours to begin with. The replay isn't waiting for closure. The replay is your brain marking the file. Still open. Needs resolution. The problem is you're waiting for a resolution the other person already gave. They just gave a different one than the one your brain needed. Still in the courtroom. Run it again if you want. The loop doesn't break when you finally understand what happened. It breaks when you realize the case was closed hours ago. By someone who wasn't even keeping score. You're not still in that courtroom because you're weak. You're there because you're the kind of person who doesn't leave until they understand. That's the same quality that makes you good at the things you're good at. You're not still replaying it because you can't let go. You're replaying it because your system treats understanding like responsibility. Most people stop when the conversation ends. You stop when the file makes sense. That's useful until the file belongs to someone else. Some files don't stay open because they're unresolved. They stay open because you're holding the wrong end of the folder. You're not weak. You're not broken. You're just someone who stayed in the room longer than everyone else. The question is whether the room still belongs to you. The replay was never the enemy. The belief that one more replay might change something, that was the trap. The case is over. You're the only one still reading the transcript.